Do you know what's weird? That people pay money to suffer. They sign up for marathons, they take ice baths, they have brutal gym programs and exams that steal their weekends. And this is not discipline. Some of them really want it. They wake up and crave the hard thing. So here is the mystery. If the brain is built to conserve energy, why then do humans chase effort on purpose? Because there is a hidden switch in our motivation system. And most people never flip it. Instead, they do the opposite. They train their brain to crave comfort, quick hits and easy wins. Then they wonder why it doesn't stick, why it doesn't work. Today I'm gonna show you how to retrain that craving so your effort feels addictive. But first we need to clear up one lie that's been ruining your motivation. Most people think about motivation as liking that something, as in I'll do it when I get to like it, or they get pumped for the moment, like I want to do it now, I want it now, but that's not how the brain works. What you need to know, your brain runs on wanting, not liking. Those are two different systems. Neuroscience research on reward breaks it into components. Liking is the pleasure of the thing, but wanting is the drive to get it. I hope you get that properly. This is the key in everything you want to do. So dopamine is strongly tied to that wanting and the learning process behind it, not simple pleasures. This is how the brain is wired. That's why you can want something even if you don't enjoy it anymore. That's also why you can learn to want things that are hard. So your goal becomes not to force yourself to love the pain. That's not how you do it. The goal is to condition your brain that effort predicts reward. Let me write this down. Now, there is a name for this in science, neuroscience. It's called the effort paradox. And what it says that effort is experienced at a cost, but it can also add value to outcomes. People can value rewards more when they had to work for them, and they sometimes choose effortful options on purpose. Here is the catch. Most people reward outcomes. That's what they do. What it says is that I'll feel good when I finish. What this does, it trains a very deadly association for your brain, which remember is an animal, is distinct from your mind. So here is where things are falling apart. Effort equals misery. For the brain, right? Don't forget this is for the brain only. So finish postpones, I would say, for the lack of a better term, the reward. So finish becomes later. And here, motivation, here is where motivation dies. When you reward yourself for the goal and not the process, it's not gonna be good for your conditioning. So reward for the goal and for the process. This is what you need. The reward for the process, not for the goal. Got it? Let me use a green color so you can clearly understand. Now, if we reward for the outcomes and we get to a place where our motivation dies, you need to be very aware of this. Very conscious aware of how your brain goes through the process, through the learning process, through the work, right? If the motivation dies, you're gonna reward the act of trying and doing. So now that we understand that the brain works in a way where there is a loop where motivation dies, what we're going to do instead is reward it for the act of trying, for the act of doing. And that becomes the main goal. The process becomes the goal, not the goal itself. So you can keep working on endless goals with proper motivation without fatigue, basically. Yes, it's possible. Back in the day, our ancestors used to hunt and stay focused for 6 hours in the bushes to hunt and just wait for that perfect moment to strike with a spear. If they wouldn't do that, their families would die. This is a very nice analogy to understand that yes, you can work for many hours with intense focus, especially if it's something you like, of course. Whoever is a creative, they already know this. So when motivation dies, we're gonna reward the process, but we're gonna do it in a way that's gonna hijack the brain's learning signal. The brain's learning signal. There we go. This is what we gotta do. We're gonna apply this in a very specific way. Now, knowing that the dopamine neurons not only respond to rewards, but they also respond to surprises. Because in a nutshell, that's the difference between what you expected and what happened in the process. That's the reward prediction error signal. And this is central to how the brain learns what to pursue. So if your brain expects effort to feel pointless, that is, and you add a small immediate right after effort, you create a better than experienced moment. And that's the battery. And here's how we're gonna apply that. Let's say you procrastinate. So we know that effort predicts reward. This is the main outcome we want our brain to reach. But there is a problem. We have proper conditioning in our way. So obstacles, conditioning. This is actually neuronal conditioning. Let me actually write it with a different color. Neuronal conditioning. Very crucial to understand. So we have the neuronal conditioning. What else do we have? We have the beliefs and then the self-image, which, as we know, everything you do has to reinforce the self-image. That's what the brain wants you to do. No matter what you do, it doesn't want to alter or change the self-image. It wants you to change what you do so what you do can actually match the self-image. But that's a topic for a different time. Now, we know we have the beliefs. What a belief is basically your worldview based on the information you had at the time, at the past time, in the past. And neuronal conditioning, what it says for me is basically the repetition of your habits. How often, how deep are your neuronal pathways connected between them to form who you are and what you do? And depending on all of these, you are going to have a coefficient, or let's say an index, okay? An index of change, of, let's say, not change, but teachability. We want to be an open-minded person who can actually be teachable. You want to be an open-minded person who can actually do everything to get away from their procrastination. Let me write it here. Right, now that we have the procrastination, we have our obstacles. Let me zoom in a bit. That should be fine. The beliefs and the index of teachability or teachability index. Okay, so now we know we are procrastinating ourselves from various reasons we can't seemingly understand, but that's fine because most of you is unconscious, or most of your beliefs and obstacles are unconscious. That's why you can't comprehend why you're stopping in your tracks. Why don't you go and chase after that big goal? You haven't got enough reasons, of course, but this is the main obstacles you're dealing with, right? So when we're dealing with procrastination and training, basically conditioning your brain to change this neuronal conditioning, this is your primary cause and effect in your brain firing, yes, cause and effect in your brain. Let's say, okay, you understand this is, I try to make like the brain, but you understand this is not the brain, it's like the brain, what I did. Anyway, you understand. So neuronal conditioning, we're trying to basically training a dog. Basically, that's what you're doing, but you're doing it on yourself, and that's a huge difference, right? Now, we know from the previous slide that we should be rewarding the process and not the outcome. So first of all, the best way I train myself to become somebody I'm not, because I know consciously that's good for me, is through mechanical repetition. Mechanical repetition. I hope you see it. This is our way out at first. We do it coldly. But do you know why that is? Can you a bit use your mind and try to understand why mechanical repetition, like sitting down and writing or going in the gym and actually start lifting some weights? Do you know why this works? Why the mechanical repetition works? First and foremost. Why is it? I'm gonna let you think about that. But meanwhile, mechanical repetition, what this is basically, the mechanical repetition, the mindless repetition of actions or words, often without understanding or any emotional connection to who we are and what we're doing, basically. And that's hard for the brain because it doesn't understand. It's like a stressor for it. Okay? Remember, we're dealing with neuronal conditioning and also the fact that there is a constant unrest in the human psychology you need to understand, right? Let me make you aware of something that's gonna change your perception of how the brain works. You have a constant unrest lying deep inside of you that's constantly asking you to pursue the biggest dopamine hitter or the biggest surprise, so to say, for the system. It's always seeking the novelty, right? While in the same time, the brain saves the energy, conserves, is conservative. The constant unrest we all have inside ourselves to constantly seek aim, to seek something, to do something all the time, to try to achieve something, comes from the constant pursuit of our ancestors from millions of years ago. What they did basically, they all the time used to improve things, improve methods, arrows, spears, and go hunting and go for the next big thing, the next big hunt. If they had like a big, like a giant, I don't know, animal they had to hunt down, they needed first to be capable to upgrade their awareness, their limited awareness and the knowledge or the fact that they have to kill that animal. And so they had to come up with new tools and new, that's one of the theories. The other one, we are in a constant unrest back in the day, millions of years ago. The constant unrest was the only thing that kept us alive and thriving and not being torn apart by wild animals. And so you have in you a constant unrest and a seeking of aim, okay? Don't forget. seeking of an aim. All the time, 24 hours. As men, we work around the clock to pursue, and we pursue something. We always chase something. Even if it's woodwork, even if it's millions, even if it's no matter what it is. We have 24 hours in a day, and we constantly pursue something in our everyday lives. Even if people who play games, they are shooting, they are aiming for something, they are seeking an aim because of this constant unrest. This is the neuronal conditioning of the millions of years of conditioning, of course. But this constant unrest can be adapted to our modern day. So you can write your book, so you can do many good things with yourself. So what you have to do in order to take this river and pour it into smaller streams, that is your deeds, to change your beliefs in your self-image and whatever else you want to do in this life, perhaps bigger things than changing your beliefs in self-image, changing an entire nation. What you have to do is just take this constant unrest and combine it with mechanical repetition until your brain links by itself the rewards that the constant unrest is the mechanical repetition and the other way around. If it makes sense for you, okay? If it makes sense for you, I hope it makes, because it does for me and it works, okay? We are not talking about identity and beliefs right now. We're talking about conditioning, right? If somebody takes you from the street and puts you in a prison, that's has nothing to do with the beliefs. It might have something to do with the self-image, but not entirely. And the neuronal conditioning is gonna adapt in that time, during your time there. It's your habit. It has to do with your limbic brain, okay? At the core, with survival, flight, fight, or the other thingy where you have to copulate or something. What was the word anyway? So you adapt, okay? But we're not talking about the beliefs and your identity in a nutshell. Again, I'm repeating myself. We're talking about the neuronal conditioning given a new environment in a prison, out of the streets in a prison. So what happens there is like discipline, but it's enforced discipline. It's not self-discipline. So it kind of, in a way, is like a mechanical repetition. There are some rules. So what your brain does, it has to take the reward from somewhere, because we are constantly seeking for an aim, having this unrest, this drive. Your brain is literally going to take a pencil and it's gonna draw something just so it can do something and express itself in a way. This is for you to understand deeply, because this is how you transmute this stress or this procrastination into drive, as I'm gonna show you in a bit. Now that we know we have the mechanical repetition, enforced, that is, let me write it with red. Self-enforced can be. So we have the self-enforced. We have the self-enforced mechanical repetition. It's not like you go on a job or you enroll into army, so you can listen to a higher authority than yourself. You actually become that authority by self-enforced mechanical repetition of the thing that you know is going to be good. And now for some people, for the audience that don't really understand how they can apply this, you basically, if you have something to do, you sit down and actually do the smallest amount until you mechanically repeat that thing and your beliefs and your self-image change. Do you understand? This is the only process you condition your brain. Of course, there is hypnosis, but that's a deeper NLP stuff. That's a different topic. But for now, what you need to understand is you need to be strict with yourself and offer yourself rewards for the process, because you enforce the mechanical repetition to be the thing the brain gets the reward for. Okay, so we have the index of teachability, or your teachability index. How open-minded are you? And we're gonna take that and put it in the following way. We are not going to use Carl Jung's psychology. We're simply going to use the neuronal conditioning in our favor, basically by mechanical repetition and then finding the meaning after. Remember, this is crucial. Find the meaning after. Index of teachability. Okay, finding meaning after, it can also be the reward, but be careful. Give the reward during the process and the meaning after, so you can solidify the beliefs, the sense of ego, and your self-image, okay? Yeah, because we also have the ego here, your surface identity. Again, this is for your completed goal, this is for your process. Now, let's unpack this, how the reward and the meaning are taking place after. We're gonna dive into, this is ChatGPT word, my God. Meaning and reward. Right, next, let's find how do we give to what we do, meaning, and how do we get a reward for the process. Right, so we have the process here, and here we have the goal, that is completed goal. Here, we give the brain reward. here, we give the goal meaning. Meaning can also be given to the process, don't forget. In the book, Man's Search for Meaning, I want to look at this book through a certain lens and how can we condition the brain to do and endure hard things. So, Viktor Frankl, basically this is just my interpretation. There is a disclaimer here, like literally this video is just a work of fiction. There's nothing real in it. You take what you want, consult your physician, whatever. Okay. So Viktor Frankl, what he said about meaning, generally, he said there is no meaning, but the meaning we give to things, okay? So basically, in your mind, for your identity, looking at yourself as a stranger would, why do you want to do the thing you want to do? Answer yourself that clearly, because until you can't answer and find the real meaning, that is your values, there is a book, The Values Factor, I forgot who wrote it, John DeMartini, I think. Find that book and get yourself those values, your values, and based on those, find yourself the meaning as of why you want the goal. This is more like spiritually, we're not training the brain, we're not doing anything just yet, like as in we do in the process. But we're mostly focusing on the ethics, the morals of your goal. Why do you want it? Be serious about it. What's the real reason? Make it clear. And when you make it, say it out loud. For let's say, for the next 2 months, every day, you literally bring it out loud. There is so much in NLP where they say when you bring the thing out loud, out into the plane, or even if you write it by hand, something changes in your biochemistry. So you are going to find that meaning of your goal. This is gonna keep you on the track. And I would add, find meaning plus reasons. Find enough reasons to get you going through the toughest times. And remember, this meaning is gonna keep you going through your hardest times. Is the creed. Is your statement, what you decree to yourself. As this is what I want to be and this is what I'm becoming. And I'm doing this thing, I'm doing the process. You're going through the hard time because you have a higher meaning, and mostly, usually, how people succeed best is when they involve other people in the process. That is, you want to get rich because you want to help other people, be it either your family or the entire nation, as Tony Robbins did, right? So you find that meaning for yourself. That's special for you. There's nobody else's business but yours to find it, right? So now that you have the meaning, you can focus on the process. Now we can train the brain, but don't skip this step. Most people are not gonna tell you, bro, quit junk food and your brain is gonna find reward. Of course this is true, but this is only half the equation. Meaning is what you need. Reasons to move ahead, right? Are you sick and tired of being poor and weak? Fine, you find meaning in that, but use that as your fuel to push you ahead. And also cultivate a vision. We're not gonna cover this here just yet, but if you find at least the meaning to go through the hardest times, as Viktor Frankl said, you are going to simply let yourself go through life like you not even existed. Is this what you want, really? No. So find something, even if it's fake at first, your mind will believe it the more you repeat it, okay? Your brain is a pattern recognition machine, and it is being conditioned through repetition or hypnosis or emotional shock, one of the three, right? So you find that meaning consciously, but really dig. This is a process between you and your inner self, that inner core, why you want to do what you do. And you start from there. You will find your meaning when you will find your reasons. Let's put it like that. Think about that. Right, next. What's the distinction here? Your goal, you drink some water. So the distinction between the process and your goal is you will have endless goals, but a constant process. If this is a constant and this is a variable, then which side do you want to play on? Do you want to take hold of your brain and understand it and give it what it needs, the reward for the process, or you want to give the reward for the goal? Because if you give the reward for the goal without having any meaning, and at least just for a moment, forget about the meaning and all that, it's not gonna take you anywhere. And not even motivation is gonna work. This is your variable, okay? This is your variable. The goal is your variable. This is your constant. A variable is where your values can change. A constant is where it stays fixed, just for the clearing out. In the pursuit of your goal is gonna be variable. But your process, that is, you're gonna work until the day you die, is a constant. Now, the way you place your aim, remember that steady flow of energy, of clear energy, ongoing energy, that's gonna help you find meaning and an aim there where it's not. So you gotta place your aim on the process and your constant. Basically on your process, which is a constant. Okay, I should have circled that with green, but I think it's fine. So you have your process and your reward. Okay, now that we know we're dealing with two different strong forces. The way to build real power and beat the procrastination, effort predicts reward. We need to train the brain to get the reward from the process and not from the goal, because the goal can change while the process stays the same. Okay, here is how you do it. Reward equals dopamine. Of course, there is more hormones of pleasure, like oxytocin, but that's fine for now. We get oxytocin is over higher, as far as I know. I'm not a medic, so don't get my advice when I talk about any, literally. Because, yeah, so we have the reward, which basically is dopamine. Dopamine is a neurochemical that acts as a pleasure catalyst for the brain, okay? That's what it does. Reward equals dopamine. The way to train, I'm gonna say this, I'm not gonna draw it at least. The way to train your brain to take the dopamine as reward from the process is by restricting the mind to focus on the goal or to project too much into the future. So what you have to do, your duty for now, until you condition this, the reward, right? The effort predicts reward loop in your brain to condition. What you do, simply put, is you take your dopamine away from cheap sources like eating bad food or even watching porn or even playing games or even allowing yourself to post on social media. You define it for yourself. Listen, this is clearly what you have to do. If you want to see clear improvement in your life, I'm not saying you have to stop everything now. No, of course you don't do that. Of course not. No. I wouldn't recommend you do that. But what you have to do on the other side, you will have to stop those until you get some momentum. Got it? Because this is all about conditioning and repetition until you create a snowball effect. And from there, you can do whatever the you want, because now that's your identity. And you do it because that's who you are. Nobody has to push you from the back. Nobody has to pull you from the front. Got it? So what you do, first of all, number one, this is step one. You restrict cheap dopamine. When you restrict cheap dopamine, remember the river I said you have inside of you that's constantly seeking an aim. To play a game, to shoot something, you know, to play pool, to shoot something, like something really you want to do, something that makes you feel good. You're seeking for that aim unconsciously. And what you do, you restrict shooting for that cheap aim, and you actually put the work into a real process, like writing a book, like reading a book, if you're not there yet, or different things that can actually lift you and raise you as a person. So, number one, you restrict the cheap dopamine. With it, you restrict the flow, okay? And so when you inhibit this river, which is like a constant river, and then it reaches a bottleneck, okay? And all this water is gonna gather up here, and it's gonna create pressure, okay? It's gonna create so much pressure. You will want to do things so badly, but it's gonna be cheap things. Remember, you will want to play games. You will want to do the most waste your time in the most unimaginable ways. So you are restricting this. We use the right color for this. There we go. You are restricting, and pressure is gonna add up, okay? Pressure is gonna increase in your reservoir because you're doing a process where you're not getting any reward because you ain't reaching any goal, and you're not even rewarding yourself for the process, right? By taking cheap dopamine. And what it does, your system is gonna want to aim so badly that now it's easier to control it. And how do we control it? We simply let it run on the process we want. It's crazy, but it's like creating an infinite energy machine. How'd you do it? Well, the process becomes the reward, and the reward becomes the process. And this is how you achieve a natural state of optimal performance. Some other people know it as flow, okay? So your reward is the process, and your process is now your reward. But until you achieve this, until you restrict, you cannot reverse the wheel. So you can create the snowball effects. Right, let's finish this point. So we restrict the cheap dopamine from cheap sources like junk food and porn and games. So you have your pleasures, you have your games, and you have your phone. So your pleasures can be whatever you want. It could be eating out and eating KFC or McDonald's, Burger King, anything. So the pressure increases the more you suppress this. But remember, you gotta do it. Because if you ain't gonna do it, like mechanically, remember, mechanically separated. If you don't do it mechanically, this constant becomes a variable. Remember, the biggest trap, this is the biggest trap. Your constant will become a variable when we're talking about your process. So if your process is variable, then it's not a matter of am I doing, am I not? No. It drops at the level of your identity. So your process will then become variable. And this is very dangerous because to a certain degree, it will affect your identity. That's not what you want. So you must restrict the flow, restrict cheap dopamine, and then this pressure, all this pressure, is going to increase, and we're going to turn that into drive. But not any drive is going to be a mechanical drive, because we're doing it first mechanically in our minds and through our actions with no emotions, because we want to become that somebody, until the meaning takes root. Remember, the meaning will grow. You will find a light to yourself. The mind and the brain and the way you interpret reality is by creating meaning. Most of the times, people take emotional actions and then find the logical reasons for those. So it's same in this case. Same, literally, in my opinion, at least, as far as I notice, is the same, right? Meaning comes after the action has been taken. If you do it before, it's even better, as I said, because now you have something to push you forward and you actually do it with intention what you want to do. But if you do it after, it works, but it can be too late for some people. And if it's too late, your process will be a variable and not a constant. So, restrict cheap dopamine, you turn that into mechanical drive. Let me write it here, the process. You transmute, with other words. You transmute or turn into mechanical drive. And you do it until meaning takes root. Okay, and let me write it down. Performed indefinitely, small compounding actions until meaning and dopamine catch up. Here's how this goes in the brain. Let me draw a nice brain. I want to draw a nice brain. Okay, buddy? There we go. That's your brain. Here's how this goes, in my opinion, on how the brain works. Right, so this is my interpretation of how we're making the transmutation from something we don't want to do to something we want to do, in how the brain works, as far as I'm concerned. For the purpose of this video, I drew a nice little brain here, and here's how everything goes into your brain. Right, ladies and gents, this is the reptilian brain, the green color. This is mostly fight or flight, or even feed, or even something else. And this is mainly to keep you alive, in a nutshell. You say you are conscious of your body. No matter how conscious you are still owned. This is what controls you for the rest of your life. Of course, there is CIA agents who have actually managed to control this brain, but that's a total subject for... Let's end that right there. So this controls you to a very large degree. This keeps your heart beating and all that. In the purple line here, we have the limbic brain, or the mammalian brain. So this brain deals with motions, memories, motor control, and decision making. Right, on the other side, on here, we have the neocortex, your sensory perception, cognition, spatial reasoning, and language. And so what we do, in the end, we restrict the cheap dopamine of the reptilian brain and the limbic brain by using our neocortex, and we literally repeat mechanically, using our will, the new conditioning for the reward to be taken from the process by these two brains, the limbic and the reptilian. Let me write it here. Reptilian, limbic, neocortex. There we go. Just like that. Have the neocortex, the limbic and the reptilian. And so we're going to repeat this mechanical drive in the limbic and the reptilian system until we find meaning through reasoning about the thing we're doing. And when this pressure increases, when this pressure increases, you're just going to blow it in the process, and your process becomes your reward. And what you want to achieve constant, your process and your reward. So you have the process and your reward. Let me make that with blue. And you have a nice synergy between the two, where the process becomes the reward, and this and that. And what about the goal if you're constantly in a process? When do you celebrate? How do you do it? Like people say, give yourself a treat or something. No. If you have something to do, if you have a process, that becomes your reward. You can work on your business like a crazy horse and still achieve amazing results without taking a break, because your reward is coming from a deep place of fulfillment where you have meaning and you have strong enough reasons to bypass your limbic system, your limbic brain, that is, okay? And it all started with a mechanical drive. And as soon as you do this, everything becomes effortless because it's your identity. I'm not saying it's gonna be easy. It's very hard to do. But this is the loop you need to reinforce in yourself. Read the book of Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. Let me write the book here. Read that guy's book. You'll understand that meaning comes from your process. And you will want to find your meaning from your reasons, okay? These two guys are going to collaborate on your efforts. And this is how you get it done. This is what you want. This thing right here. This is this is what you want, brother. This is your nuclear fission reactor. This right there. This is what you want. Achieve this and you will be doing amazing things with complete ease. And your goal, remember, is a variable. Some people have big goals, other people have smaller goals. Regardless of what you choose something that you know is worth it and make use of conditioning the neocortex and your limbic brain by doing the mechanical drive performed indefinitely with small compounding actions until meaning and dopamine catch up or kick in. That's it. And that's how you become unstoppable. You create this psychological loop. But there is a drawback to all of this. This thing right here is very fragile. Now let's have in mind some side effects, that is some bad things you will encounter in this loop. Process and reward, yes. This reactor is fragile. Why is it fragile? Because it requires momentum. This is the secret of the loop. So you can keep doing harder and harder things and pushing harder and staying longer and writing better and doing research properly and all that. So momentum is what you have to look after. This is your main priority. This becomes your main priority once you undertake the challenge of doing hard things with ease. Your main priority is to maintain this momentum regardless. The way it starts, let me take my ruler. So we basically have two grids here. So this is the beginner and this is the advanced. A beginner, the way it would approach maintaining the reward and process loop, it would go like this. Okay? This is how a beginner would start. It would have periods of high creativity or heightened creativity and periods of low and depressing efforts. This is how the beginner goes about making things happen. This is because he doesn't understand that the reward is being taken from the process, but rather from the goal. And this is the biggest mistake. It loses momentum. And what it does, it fluctuates. What an advanced student or a serious entrepreneur will have this momentum like this. This is the only difference. It will have periods of ups and very low periods of downs, but mostly upward advancement. Okay? There is a book called The Path of Least Resistance used by Navy SEALs to get back to a normal living life. And this is what they do. They ask the Navy SEALs in the book to do small incremental changes, that is mechanical stuff we've covered, until they reach such a momentum that is hard for them to go back to the old identity. If it happens for you to lose momentum, all you have to do, if you're all the way up here, you go all the way back there and you start from there. So you can actually reinforce, you write it here, loop of infinite energy. Okay? You have the loop of infinite energy. So if it happens that your process becomes a variable and not a constant, that is, you change your goal and your process stops, your reward will shift, will change basically, and you will begin to lose momentum. And then when your goal basically becomes your process and your reward will be taken from the process, and then you reinforce the process reward loop, and then you'll steadily go upwards again. But you will constantly need to have at the back of your mind the meaning as of why you started. As this is gonna keep you going and advancing because you don't look back anymore to the former self, okay? And this is why the momentum has to be kept going and strong, has to be reinforced at times. So really have and pay close attention to the momentum you've built along the years, along the decades of who you became, because it's hard for you to go back to the 12-year-old version of yourself. So all the time, aim to increase, okay? Aim to increase this momentum. Keep the momentum going. Keep the loop going, up and down. That's not you. It's fine if you go up and down. But now that you understand what I gave you, the system in this video, you will become an unstoppable machine, I would say, where you find fulfillment and meaning. Not for yourself, but for the others. I hope you'll do your study on the books I've mentioned in the video, because they've helped me a lot, and I wish they would help you as well. And yeah, this concludes the video. It's been a pleasure presenting this video to you, and I'll see you in the next one. Marius here. Bye.